well, let's focus on Connect for Impact. We are looking at the World Summit Award in its global dimensions. We are looking at how to create content-driven applications which have a specific community impact. And it's my pleasure to have here a very distinguished panel from Chile, from Guatemala, and from Canada, from the north to the south, and from the south to the north. And the key issue which we have here is that WSA is a community. It's a community of people who work together, who learn from each other, and who are exploring with each other something which they can use in their local context. In WSA, we have a very specific term for this, and that is social franchising. That means that you imitate and emulate what you have seen other people do well in their context, in their local community, in order to find new ideas, have innovative solutions, and possibly different kind of strategies also for your own local context. WSA is in that sense a continuous learning enterprise. I want to welcome particularly Matías Rojas from Socialab in Chile. I want to welcome from Guatemala our very, very dear friend and ICT expert and entrepreneur Maria Zaghi. And I want to welcome very specifically and especially from my second home country, from Canada, Catherine Warren, who is also a member of the board of directors, which I have the privilege to chair. Why don't we start with you, Matías, and give us a local view on what you do at the moment, how you do it, and what is the community aspects which you are addressing. Please, Matías.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Peter. I'm very happy to be here sharing with you. Basically, I'm co-founder of Socialab. We are an open innovation community in Latin America, which is basically focused on solving complex issues in a distributed way, using collective intelligence to implement what we call triple impact innovation or triple impact entrepreneurship, which is which have economic impact. Basically, they are economically sustainable, environmental and social impact. And this community, well, it's an open innovation platform that has more than 1 million users. We call them creators, which is based in different clusters of problems, which are raised from companies, governments, municipalities, and different NGOs. So basically, we're trying to make the common people, regular people with ideas to connect with companies, governments, and NGOs through their ideas, through their innovations. What we are focused right now, we started incubating and accelerating startups, but since 12 years ago we started, and we have seen that they still remain small. They don't grow their impact in general. But once they meet these big actors, meaning companies and governments that need these solutions, impact amplifies. So we're not talking only about collaboration, like a philanthropic collaboration. We're talking about supply and demand. For example, right now there's a huge pain on companies to turn more green, meaning new renewable energy sources or better water management. And there's a lot of startups that do that. So we're connecting them to provide these innovative solutions, and then the startup grows and the company's impact grows too.
Thank you very much for this short intro. I understand that you are one of the largest networks in the world doing this. You have a particular kind of role of a mediator. And why don't we jump all the way to Canada? Because I know that Catherine Warren, you are doing something very different, but functionally not far away from this. Catherine, please just tell us where are you now? You worked for the Economic Commission in Vancouver before, but what do you do now, and how do you do it, and what kind of impact?
Thank you so much, Peter, and very nice to be here with all of you and my fellow panelists. So I run an organization called Innovate Edmonton. Edmonton is North America's northernmost major city, and we're a city of about 1 million people with a very visionary city council that's investing in what I would call inclusive innovation. So it's my goal to position this city as a global innovation capital. And one of the ways that we're doing this is by identifying and mapping the local innovation scene against great global challenges. So things like the climate emergency, public health, food security, digital inclusion, truth and reconciliation, to name a few. So these big zeitgeisty issues that we know there's market demand for all over the world, and we know this is where enlightened investors want to put their money. So we do this through programming, through positioning, through partnerships, another great reason to be part of the WSA community. I would say that one of our challenges is that this ecosystem, like many urban ecosystems, has kind of conflated the notion of innovation and technology. And so there's a perception, perhaps, that all innovation is synonymous with technology. But what certainly we know as members of this global community, there is social innovation, cultural innovation, Indigenous innovation, so many kinds of innovations. So it's really up to me to identify and pull those strings together and get those different innovation communities collaborating in an interdisciplinary way to benefit the economy, society, and culture here, and to take that to the world.
Okay, so that's very, very exciting what you're telling us. So you moved across the Rockies from Vancouver to Edmonton, which is, I hope not a loss of quality of life. But it's also quite interesting that you are taking a very different but similar approach than what Matías was saying, how you are also in something called innovation matchmaking with a perspective on growth of innovative companies who are involved in social impact issues and who are addressing social impact issues. I think there's a lot of issues and topics which we come back to. But before I do this, I say, Maria, how are you doing in Guatemala?
Thank you. Very well, and very happy to be with you all. And just to tell you a little bit about what we are doing here in Central America, I was also a sort of a co-founder in putting together the Silicon Valley that we have here. It's an operation that started in 2010, and it's a very, very big operation now and very well known in the region. And we're very happy because we've been collaborating for many, many years with WSA, and it has been a very key partner for us in trying to level and standardize and raise the level of the entrepreneurs and the applications that we have. We usually work with entrepreneurs and companies that are related to ICTs, information and communication technologies. But after the COVID started and the pandemic is ending now, hopefully, we're starting to work also with the orange economy, everything that is creativity, and especially trying to incorporate technologies into them. But we have an incubator, we have an accelerator, we have a co-working. And right now what we're working is trying to collaborate with other countries in the region, especially in Latin America, with other innovation hubs, because we are usually referred to as an innovation hub too, and trying to make some type of collaboration, just as we do with Matías in Chile with his organization. And we are working very much also in promoting entrepreneurs in rural areas in Latin America. And thirdly, we're trying to do outsourcing and nearshoring operations because we need to promote some sort of business model which our entrepreneurs in ICTs can really start doing business globally. Okay, thank you very much.
It's very impressive what you're telling us, and also it shows how community building within WSA has a long vision. It's not just a long tail, but it's also a long journey in terms of finding the right business models and the right, placement of yourself in the business model. Let's dive a little bit more into this and look at it also in terms of the regional specificities, in terms of what you have in Latin America, Central America, and in North America in these kind of different kind of contexts. Matías, why don't you start off and talk a little bit about this issue of what you said is the supply and demand. What are the challenges actually for startups when they are meeting bigger, let's say, partners? You were saying, okay, there's a innovation gap, which you see on the part of bigger actors, stakeholders, corporations, but also I would say public administrations. How does this work so that this is not a relationship of exploitation or takeover, so that there is a kind of creative independence preserved in terms of social impact work with technology and digital? Please, Matías.
Yes, thank you, Peter. I think that the initial problem is what you mentioned about supply and demand. Sometimes we make the mistake of accelerator or incubating startups towards their value proposition don't have demand. Basically, they are not solving. They're solving no one's problem, and that sounds so obvious, but there's something that we don't take into account when we support them. So I would say, Peter, that the first issue is understanding who needs your solution. And I repeat, it's very obvious, but we don't take it into account as accelerators or incubators. So in that sense, what's happening right now in South America, and I believe it in whole Latin America, is that corporations and governments are more open to receive innovation from the outside. And that's a good thing. It's a very good thing, because what is called right now corporate venturing, which is the connection from outside innovation to different core businesses, it's something that's really getting stronger here in Latin America. So I would say that this asymmetry between supply and demand has to be taken into account. Secondly, there's the bootstrapping issue. In Latin America in general, there's not a lot of venture capital, of money directed to these startups. So basically the dilemma of the startup is to say, hey, I have to sell something to keep alive and accomplish my purpose as organization, as entrepreneurship. And that's a very difficult equilibrium to do, because if you don't take into account your cash flow, basically you are broke, and you can't offer your value proposition to a lot of organizations. But on the other hand, if you are very focused on generating income in the short term, you lose your dream, to say it in some way. So that's an equilibrium that's difficult to do. And one last thing is that in general, in Latin America, there's not much headquarters. Maybe in Brazil, which is a country where we entered 2 years ago, you see a little bit more of headquarters of big companies. But still, decisions are taken in other countries, Northern Hemisphere mainly, so that the national franchises of these big companies don't make a lot of decisions. They just receive information, strategy, and then execute. So we have sometimes to get to these headquarters, because what we're talking about is not the short-term quick wins, but it's basically that we believe that companies and governments is something a little bit different, but companies should evolve to a triple impact model. They can't survive if they're only focused on maximizing equity and revenue for the shareholders, but for all stakeholders. So that's something pretty. It's a vision in a more that has to be told to the C-suite, not only to the local leadership. So I think that those are the main three challenges that we have right now.
Thank you very much for pointing this out to us. You said there are basically two issues. One is the value proposition, often from people who are coming in the incubator and accelerator program, do not have a clear enough idea of what the needs are and who the customers are. Basically, the customer discovery process has not been structured well enough. Okay, that's one thing. The other one is that the bootstrapping issue in terms of short-term revenue versus, let's say, developing further your idea. That's a balance which one needs, and it's always a difficult issue regarding when you are, finding customers. How do you go, and then you basically get off track in terms of where you actually should invest your especially when you are in software engineering. You know that what you need in order to go further, and somebody else wants but something different. Tell us a little bit more, just to deepen and the understanding of what your references are. You were talking previously already about the triple impact innovation and triple innovation model. Explain to everybody in this conversation what you mean and how this model plays an important role for your way of getting a grip on this situation, please.
Yes, I think that the B Corp movement, which is since 2010, more powerful here in Latin America, is our guideline. Is the concept that enterprises and entrepreneurships should have this triple bottom line, meaning that you are not only controlling your EBITDA, your revenues in every board meeting, but you're also controlling and declaring and being accountable for social impact and the social and environmental impact of your business. So you're not only telling how much money you earned by saving some cost or selling a little more, but how did you, for example, change the lives of communities around your factories, or contributed to a regenerative focus on forest, for example, or on nature itself. So I think the triple impact is the only way that we could see sustainability in the long term, because this is a personal belief, but I don't see how in 10 years more companies will still be generating earning money by contaminating, by generating what they call externalities, which are not external, which are very internal to the core business of enterprises. So I believe that this triple bottom line, which should be controlled after every board meeting, should be what drives the decision in the short term too, not only in the long term vision, but in the short term.
I think one of the reasons why I think this is so important is because when I look at Catherine, specifically, there's a whole, let's say, paradigm switch which comes with this, that you take off your eyes from the stock market and from basically the business and the money bottom line, and you look at those other bottom lines. Catherine, is that already something which for Innovate Edmonton plays a role? You want to create something like what you call the global innovation capital, and you want to map it against global challenges. You call them zeitgeisty. I think they are issues of survival. So, just explain to us how you deal with this issue, and then we can go and talk to Maria, because I think that this goes really to the core of where we are at with WSA in terms of the social impact side. Mm-hmm. Catherine, please.
Yes, I could not agree more. I am so impressed with what I hear Matías saying. It's absolutely critical that the programs that we deliver expand over time to articulate different kinds of business models, different kinds of financing models. We need to get away from this kind of sole source, unicorn or die, like nothing in the middle. And, we know that enlightened investors are looking for the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. We know that young companies are not groomed or coached to think outside of that Silicon Valley model. I'm speaking generally here as an ecosystem builder, not specific to Edmonton, but it's also true in many large Canadian cities that we've kind of gone down this Silicon Valley path when clearly we have so much more to offer as a society of a diverse population that values equity, that values inclusion, that is trying to go through a process of reconciliation. And so, we need to look back at to our essence and our identity as Canadians and see that we are very much vision aligned with this triple bottom line, and we're uniquely suited to deliver on those metrics. And by the way, if we don't start valuing people and planet, and we continue to just value profit, there won't be people and there won't be planet. So, we must go down this route at our peril. B Corps are a fantastic model for companies to consider, but I think the point is we need to get to the founders at a very early stage. We need to get them to identify and understand their purpose. And then we need them to build a business model that is authentic to who they are. And sure, there may be some founders in the mix that want to go the Silicon Valley route and that path, and God bless them, but that is not the only path. And we would be remiss to just continue to do that rinse and repeat, because in fact, it's getting the world into a whole heck of a lot of trouble, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you very much for these observations. You are making a very, let's say, memorable distinction between what you call the Silicon Valley model on the one hand and the people, planet, and profit model on the other hand. You sum it up very well, what Matías was saying. And it's really interesting that when you look at the local context or the regional context in Latin America, what Matías represents, and what you are saying about Canada, and obviously also parts of the United States, is that you're really seeing this distinction that there are basically what one would call two cultures of business developing, okay? And that is something, those who are in literary study know that this notion of two cultures is something very, very important in terms of understanding participatory culture versus, high level and authoritarian culture. Maria, how does this play out?
By the way, sorry. I will interrupt to say, we used to have a monoculture until people like Matías came around and said, hey, this isn't right. So I think you're saying some very important things, and I would be super happy if we had a plethora of cultures after we all do this good work. Okay.
We'll come back to this right away. I have some questions on this. Maria, how does it play out with you and what you described as a very successful and massively grown ecosystem in Guatemala? Many people don't know very much about that. A lot of people have, let's say, very placative, understanding of Guatemala in terms of its politics and also its geopolitical location and so on. Just tell us a little bit more, give us a little bit more of a screen view of what is happening in Guatemala, also around this issue of the triple impact, please.
Sure. we are part of Latin America, but Central America is kind of a little different market. As you know, we have other type of challenges, security challenges, migration part challenges, political challenges, and we do need to survive in with models in different levels. For example, we have companies that are working with a Silicon Valley model. We have Duolingo, for God's sake, that's a Guatemalan company. We send it to the States. So we have persons and companies that are working on that level. Then we have like the regional level, which is more in Latin America, which are companies that are working with more Spanish-speaking countries and this like that. And the third one is the rural areas. And we especially work with North Central America. That is Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, which is a very interesting ecosystem. And to be honest, that's where people like Matías and other organizations have been very helpful, because we do need the money, Catherine, in order to have the big companies, because these companies are contributing a lot to our economy. I don't know if you know this, but our government doesn't contribute very much to innovation. For example, the Silicon Valley that we have in Guatemala is all private funded, okay? All the hubs that we have in the different cities are not done by the government, are private funded. So we are experimenting and doing a mixture of having the Silicon Valley model to get money, to have the local and the rural areas, because we also have very small entrepreneurs that are surviving, guys. They're working and selling their things on Facebook in order to survive day to day, especially because of the pandemic. So it's getting very interesting, but I do agree. Of course, we need the value proposition model and the triple LX that Matías is discussing, and we're making it part, but we are more focused also on sustainability, on the fact that they can do things and try to put a little bit of order, because a lot of people are migrating and we would like to keep them. I'm pretty sure we can do it, but we have to get organized, because we don't want to be a burden to our northern friends, okay, Canada and the United States, okay? We have enough resources in our countries to do that. So that's more or less what we are doing, trying to mix all these things together. And it's been 10 years and we're still here. So I think it's more or less working, okay? Thank you.
I think it's very interesting what you're saying is, I mean, you're not putting this as a clash of two cultures, but you're basically having a model where you build on different kind of levels, you know, in terms of how you are working in terms of the reach of the company. One which is, let's say, continental, the other, or global, the other one which is very much context bound to the Spanish language and also to the Spanish partner and the neighboring countries, and then something which is the rural side, you know, that's quite interesting. It's very much, you know, in terms of when you look at India, you know, you have a very clear distinction between the red market and the green markets, you know, and between what's happening in the rural and what's happening in the city. It's very much in that kind of direction. When you look at in terms of incubation and acceleration, does this, let's say, different kind of levels mean that they are also a ladder, that the people go from one level to the next level and to the third level? Or is it that you see these ecosystems as being operating very, very differently within their own logic, and while constituting different levels, there's very little, let's say, exchange and permeation between them?
No, to be honest, we have come to the realization that we have to respect the levels, okay? Because the people that are in rural areas, it's very difficult to make them go over there. Right now, we're experimenting in the middle level and trying to make them the continental level, you call it internationalization, okay? It's complicated. So we learn to respect it. But I think that every entrepreneur and every organization or company in its way, or person, because sometimes there are even entrepreneurs that are working on a personal level, they have their own approach and reach, okay? So we have to respect that. And the ones that would like to go up, that's why we are working with this network of hubs and mentors, because we have to help them understand how they can do it. And sometimes they try to do it and then fail, and sometimes they are a very big success, okay? So we have to help everybody, but the idea is to create sustainability in the country so that we can generate more work and be able to really provide for our own ecosystem, okay?
It's interesting when you look at Chile, Canada, and Guatemala, from a political economy point of view, all three countries are in some ways dependency characterized countries. So in Canada, it's obviously the case, that you have Canada and the US. With Guatemala, you have, Latin America vis-a-vis North America. And with Chile, you have it also that you are a powerhouse within your region, but you know that there's a difference in size between Chile and Brazil and Argentina and so on. How do you deal with this dependency issue? And it comes to mind when Matías talks about the model and the idea that linking up startups with big companies might be quite a challenge because of the lack of headquarters. So that the decision making is made somewhere else. And that is a situation of, let's say, a clear indication of dependency relationship in terms of the larger economy. So how do you deal with this when you deal with people who have a good idea for Microsoft, but they have only a sales office around the corner? Matías.
Yes, I would like to add a new word to the conversation, which is interdependency. I believe that there's also I totally agree with what I say, meaning that there is a hierarchy, and that's real. Who finances basically the headquarters? Who takes the most important decision? Basically, the headquarters. But what I've seen is that also all economies. Well, the Russian-Ukrainian conflict shows us how we depend on interconnectedness. And when we talk about startups and innovation, I think it's pretty the same. Basically, one example here in Latin America, we work with Ambev, which is this huge liquid beer company worldwide, and they have their headquarters in Brazil, but they still want to receive innovators from the other countries where we work with Accelerator 2, which is Chile, Paraguay, Bolivia. So the talent is distributed equally in different countries. So and also for innovators, there's no boundaries. Well, moreover with the pandemic, but because the digital transformation of ourselves have shown us that we could travel to Brazil and Chile in a click, basically. So I think to answer your question, Peter, even though there is this dependency, I think every day these headquarters are looking outside, not as their people that they control, but people that add value to the whole chain. So they just right now they don't say, "Hey, you in Chile have to do this," but they ask. They say, "What's going on in Chile that could make sense for other countries?" And that's a question that 10 years ago wasn't asked, because it's, as you said, Peter, it's a small market with a sales office and nothing else. But innovation breaks that hierarchy because it's distributed equally. I totally agree with what Maria says. Resources are not, but talent is. So if we are able to reallocate those resources, we can raise that talent from Guatemala, from Chile, from Canada, from whatever, go into those headquarters. So we are interconnected, and as the more the companies realize that they still depend on this small office at the end of the world, and they can get more value from them, that only the franchise fee, to say it in some simple way.
That's very interesting. This afternoon we had Hack the Culture Gaps innovation pitches from our category Culture and Tourism. And one of the things which was being discussed there is how the technology development has lowered the barrier of access and entry into the market, and how it is, by conclusion, very much dependent on the talents of people, the education of people, and the ingenuity of people where certain developments take place. Let me ask Catherine, how are you dealing with Edmonton on this issue of headquarters? I mean, you got a lot of tar sand headquarters there, but you don't have and drilling and and heavy oil industry. That's not very good for the planet. That's rather poisonous for the planet. So how do you deal with the headquarter issue there? Or are you transforming the oil industry already into the future digital?
Well, we're definitely poised to, deliver on clean energy. So Edmonton is also, for example, a global hydrogen hub. We're known for artificial intelligence and machine learning, and so the world is looking for alternative energy, and the world is looking for these I would say horizontals. So in the same way that maybe 20 years ago everyone was going digital, now everyone's going to move to AI and machine learning enabled baselines or platforms, and we'll build from there. So Edmonton has some great foundational tech, but the really interesting innovations will ride on that technology, in my opinion, and that's what these large companies are looking for. I would also say that, with respect to becoming a global innovation capital, there are some key ingredients. For example, universities and research universities. So we haven't brought that up yet here in this discussion, but of course they're crucibles for innovation and for this interdisciplinary solving of these big global issues. So for example, here at University of Alberta in Edmonton, we have Dr. Michael Houghton, who recently won a Nobel Prize in virology. And so, having, let's say, fantastic research, but also superstar talent draws in not just foreign headquarters, but creates stickiness for local headquarters.
Thank you very much, Catherine. When was the last Nobel Prize winner from Guatemala, Maria?
Years ago, okay, many years ago. But we need to get one in science and technology, something like that. We're almost there. Wait for it, okay? No. Yeah.
Let me just rephrase this issue. What Catherine is talking about is, I understand that Catherine is very much, looking at the ecosystem in terms of its overall structure and the development thanks to the city and the involvement of the region and so on. So there's a lot of public interest in there. You were talking about very much that what your work is doing and how the ecosystem in Guatemala has been built out over the last 10, 15 years is very much and solely private driven. Tell us, what are these kind of interests and how do they connect to this issue of headquarter and dependency issue, or how do you manage this interdependence which Matías was talking about?
Well, we come to the realization that big companies are not necessarily, well, they're present in Guatemala with small offices, but it's kind of difficult to make Google put together one of their labs in Guatemala right now. I don't think we're ready for it yet, but I don't know if you remember that recently we have a visit from the Vice President of the United States, Mrs. Harris.
Yes, well, I know. Yeah.
She brought a lot of investment, MasterCard, Microsoft, Amazon. So we have a lot of jobs now. Of course, like Matías is saying, they're not taking them to the US. They are using the digital world to do it, okay? But that's also creating some sort of a problem for us. It's called like a little bit of brain drain, because now we don't have enough engineers to do our own things here, okay? So it's getting kind of complicated. So we appreciate very much when other countries especially provide, and Canada has also given a lot of money to Guatemala, and we appreciate that. But I think we have to focus and try to work on the agendas, because the idea is to benefit both sides and try to collaborate. We also have had experience of a lot of projects that have received money, but they just come up not with necessarily results. It's just like reports and this and that. So I become a very controversial leader here in Guatemala, especially because I'm a woman and I'm always complaining that we have to make things work and make it sustainable. And of course, with all the elements that Matías and Catherine are talking, and the impact and the everything, because we also have a lot of environmental problems too. So we have to be very political, but we have to put a stand in terms of not just getting the money and saying yes. We have to speak out and talk, and that's why we're getting organized in the private sector and the government and try to speak out our minds, because we appreciate the collaboration, but we also have to look for our own interest too.
Thank you very much. I think that's very important to get more depth insight into this. Let me then bring out a question which, is in the background of what Catherine was saying before. She was using something which is a very unique term, and which I don't think might resonate with many people, and that is called Indigenous innovation. And that is something now where Canada is going through basically a re-engineering of its entire national identity over the last 15, 20 months. And that has very much to do with the local discovery of how the indigenous population has been not only suppressed, but also systematically, culturally deprived of its talents, vision, and its culture. And there is the issue now for WSA very much regarding the contextual side of innovation in terms of the local community. Does that, ring a bell with you, what I'm saying now, Catherine? Can you expand on this before I ask Matías and Maria to answer to this on their own terms? Catherine, please.
That very well said, very eloquent. We need to kind of go back and start from the beginning in terms of building back relationships and trust with Indigenous peoples in Canada as a gateway to any social or economic advance that we might make or contribute to the world. So this means listening to Indigenous leaders. It means bringing innovative Indigenous youth into the conversation, supporting educational pathways, supporting digital connectivity and access, all in this spirit of reconciliation. To not do this is also to leave economic benefits on the table. So, billions of dollars, are anticipated through working collaboratively with Indigenous communities. And we've disenfranchised them. They don't always see themselves as part of the innovation community. They don't necessarily feel welcome in incubators and accelerators. I'm speaking broadly, but it is up to us at Innovate Edmonton and other municipal innovation authorities across Canada to create this welcoming environment and to listen and learn from Indigenous colleagues.
How much does the Indigenous view of the relationship between people and planet play a role there? I'm coming back to our original, conversation on the triple impact model. Mm-hmm. Does that come in, or is this a naive way of posing this issue?
Well, it's not at all naive, but there are so many First Nations in Canada, and they have, as you well know, many different languages, value sets, goals, purposes. So, some tribes are aligned with extractive energy, for example, and others are, very focused on sustainability. So like any plethora of communities, you can't make generalizations. But, I would say that I do believe that reconciliation and sustainability can be twinned. And if we look at these things together, we'll probably be further ahead in the long run.
Maria, do you have any kind of model of indigenous innovation for the segment which you called rural?
Well, to be honest, that's what we found out when we started doing the rural area, okay? You remember that we live in a different world in Guatemala. Our operation is a $20 million operation in the capital city. And then we have all these poor areas in Guatemala that are rural, where we have 23 different rural Mayan groups working together, all with different mediums. And that's where Canada is helping us a lot, Catherine, because I just recently discovered this. I work in my world, which is a very good world, but now we're going to have to help these people. And what I have found out, and I'm pretty sure Matías is going to confirm it, is that, oh my God, we have so many great indigenous leaders, young people, even old people that I really am starting to admire. So for me, like the last 5 years have been very, very rewarding because I'm starting to deal with this. And we have to learn a lot from you guys in terms of how we're going to help them, although they are doing their best in order to help themselves. But we have technology and we have other resources and our experience in the past 10 years that we can use. But we're just starting, and it's a very interesting challenge that we have. Thank you.
Matías, how does it play out in your world, and how does Socialab deal with this? I mean, a lot of stuff which you have on your website has to do with scaling big, but this means being attentive to the local.
Yes, I'm not expert in the indigenous issues, but still in Chile we are facing a very complex issue regarding the not in general, but there's a specific originary nation here in Chile, which are the Mapuches, which live in a specific region in Chile, and I think there's a lot of confrontation because basically there are two different ways of seeing the world, of seeing the future, and in that sense, I don't believe that what we were told in school, basically, which is a very linear and homogeneous way of seeing the world, applies right now. Basically, what social innovation does is the opposite, is an heterogeneous view that there can be different truths, to say it in some way, and it isn't linear, it's recursive. It's like different. You can go back and learn again from the different processes. So basically, what I see in social innovation that applies in this case is that for I have a engineering school, how do you say it, a university career, so maybe that's very biased by my formation, but it's a complexity view of the world. So for complex issues, you need distributed solutions. So you can't have like one top-down view of the world to say, hey, the acceleration process for indigenous themes should be that way. You have to do and neither a bottom-up way where you say, hey, we'll do everything that the people say. It's kind of a co-creation of both worlds. So in this sense, social innovation is based on detecting local problems, but connected them to a global view, meaning that technologies that are very far away from these communities should help, for example, blockchain for smart contracts or for micro insurance for agricultures should match in some way. So when we face these complex issues, which in the complexity jargon are called wicked problems, that's the literature, how literature see it, is that you don't have problems to solve, you have systems to optimize. So for example, when you have a group of innovators, one that works in generating or cleaning water from a contaminated river, that impacts directly on education, and that matches with another startup that's working on generating better education in a rural school. And they work together, even though that one is water and the other one is science, STEM education for rural communities. So when you start seeing the complete system, is that you start understanding how these social innovations can be implemented in a more harmonic way. It's not only one startup that you're accelerating, you're optimizing a complete system. And that applies for indigenous issues here in Chile, in the region I live, but also on migration issues that I see in the north of Chile, because there's a reason of why people are coming to Chile in such a big hurry. And if we don't understand that reason and its complexity, we can't solve that. We can optimize that system. I don't know if I made myself clear, but because a lot of things going on. But tell me, Peter, if I get it.
I can see that you are getting more and more excited by our conversation. Yeah, although we have to finish in about 8 minutes. I think that's very good. What you gave now as a definition of social innovation, basically to detect local problems and to connect them to a global view. That's very much what WSA is all about and what we are doing with this Global Congress, because it is Connect for Impact. And that is very much the issue and the challenge, and also our path to a solution. Before we close in 5 minutes, I just wanted to ask if, Catherine, you have a question for Maria. Maria, you have a question for Matías, or Matías, you have a question for Maria and Catherine. Just that because I've been directing this conversation so much, and maybe I left something out which was important for you to ask to each other. Would you mind doing that?
I would love to. And I feel like I found my people. And this is always the way, Peter, with WSA. I feel like I'm in very good company. And it's so gratifying to hear people all over the world dealing with the same ecosystem building opportunities and challenges. So thank you for this. I will start by asking Matías, you're very focused on systems thinking, you're focused on social enterprise. Is that entirely divorced from what's going on in Chile in the tech community? Or is there synergy and integration? Like, I'm talking about structurally, how you're set up for success in terms of the different agencies there.
Yes, I think there has been a big. It's a good thing that there's an integration between public and private sector. There's a 10-year policy, basically in Corfo, which is the Government Innovation and Entrepreneurial Office, which has been connected the last 10 years, 12 years, connecting different actors in the ecosystem. So I think there's a good community. We're only like 18 million people in Chile, so we're not talking about what other big countries, the difficulty of connecting with different very, very far away people in different cities. But still, I think there's a gap in regarding how technology impacts on the daily basis. Because with an example, last year we worked with a blockchain Open Innovation Challenge with the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and there's amazing technology, regarding blockchain and cryptocurrencies and smart contracts, what I was saying before, but still there's a loss of perspective on how this impacts in the in the last agriculture in a rural area in the south of Chile, because the technology has to do with adoption of the technology, and not all the time these leaders of these entrepreneurships have the tools to get there. Maybe it's through an SMS, a small message. It doesn't have to do with a huge complex platform. So, well, that's an example, but I think there's a gap still to be closed.
Thank you.
Matías, do you have a question for Catherine or for Maria?
I would like to ask for advice. What, yes, in your experience, Catherine and Maria, what would you say in a tweet for what I already told about what's happening in Chile? What would you advise me and Socialab? What would be your counsel in a broad sense?
Catherine, what would be your tweet?
Well, I mean, I think you've made the tweet of the day, which is wicked problems require distributed solutions. So to that, I would say, let's use the WSA to build more strategic partnerships to support you on this journey. We want to make sure that you're not feeling in any way like you're doing this alone. There's certainly a reciprocity that I can gain from working with you, and I would be very happy to collaborate on solving some of these wicked problems together.
Maria, do you have a tweet?
No, I don't have a tweet. We're going to have a virtual coffee. All of us again, Peter, and especially if you can participate, and all others, because our Mexican representative in the WSA is also important to be Rudy. We have a lot to talk, but I want to say just thanks. And I'm going to talk to Matías later. We're going to have a very long conversation because they're already helping us here, and I'm pretty sure we can help them also here in Central America, especially from the private sector side. But thank you so much to WSA and their community. As always, we have learned so much, Peter, because of the opportunity to learn what's happening in other countries. We've been able to change my own country. And I'm especially thankful because now I'm teaching other youngsters because I'm already going out of the way. So it's a very interesting experience to be in WSA. It's one of the things that I keep close to my heart, and I really hope we keep on doing these things like Catherine said, and maybe we can put some together, some type of forums among us so that we can work together more in this type of very interesting topics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think you closed our session very much. The point which Catherine made and picked up on Matías, complex issues need distributed solutions. That's one side. The other thing is local is where our humanity is. We are never global. We are always in one local community. And therefore, it's very important that we are developing context-driven and content-driven solutions. And that way we then can also, if we are connecting globally the way we are doing today, and we will do, over the next 2.5 days still, then we can do this.